Hello and welcome to another episode of the original Intersex Connect Live, the place where the people in and affecting the intersex community come together. I'm your host, Jessup Benedict. In today's episode, we'll be talking to Dr. Irene Pons, attorney, professor at University of Central Florida, human rights activist protecting intersex people from ridiculous laws, and so much more. This is an interactive broadcast, so we will be able to respond to your comments and questions real time. So feel free to make a comment and let us know what you're thinking. So, by the way, the music, I love the music and I get all caught up in it. We get that music at no cost from bensound.com. It's bensound.com. And we really, really appreciate them. And I don't ever want to forget to mention that because that's way better than the music we started with. Anyway, so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how some laws were changed. But there was several good things that happened for the intersex community in 2022 that I wanted to highlight before we jump right into this, because I think this is another one of the successes of 2022, our whole show today. So I did get this information from interactadvocate.org. It's Interact is for the youth, and I definitely don't qualify as youth, but they have enormous amounts of information, and I highly, highly recommend you at least go there and check it out. One of the things they noted happened this year is that President Biden stated it is the policy of the United States of America to pursue an end to violence and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, and sex characteristics. That was actually in 2021, but it was right on the line there. So also in 2022, the United States acknowledged that intersex people continue to be subjected to unnecessary teeth are slipping or something. Anyway, the intersex people continue to be subjected to unnecessary surgeries without consent. And that was done in front of the Human Rights Council. So they are admitting in front of the Human Rights Council that it is a problem and still a problem. As we did on our last show, we mentioned Kimberly Zeiselman, who is the working with the Department of State as the senior advisor to LGBTIA situations. And then let's see. The United States has a strategy to end gender-based violence globally, specifically calling for the end of the mutilation of genitalia of intersex infants and adolescents. And I think that's a huge win right there. Just for them, that proof's in the pudding. We'll see what happens. All right, so today's show, I should probably bring in my co-host, Julie. All right, where you at, Julie? Come on.
I'm right here.
You are.
I also wanted to say, coming off, first off, everyone's going to be like, what is wrong with her? I do not have my teeth in today. You're slipping on your teeth. I'm not wearing mine. It's a long story, but I have to get that figured out. But what I wanted to say was... What? The model hand Gabby O'Deal, she's on the cover of Vogue this month, also stating that she is intersex. So that is something that's great that is coming out as well. We are getting more visibility in people standing up and using their platforms to share their intersex variation and stories. So congratulations to her and for Vogue and Teen Vogue for
absolutely
as well. Okay, what?
Absolutely. So today's episode is kind of about you. Now, we did a whole episode on the fact that you're not your average XXY. So I don't want to rehash all of that. But for the people that haven't seen that episode, can you kind of explain your I hate the word diagnosis. Your
Just say
variation
variation.
of
Yeah, I like variation. So I am XXY. So I was born back in the day. They called it Klinefelter syndrome. They are no longer calling it that anymore because Klinefelter's is a disease of the testes, and you have to be XXY to develop Klinefelter syndrome. But not every XXY is going to have Klinefelter syndrome. So now medical jurisdiction is trying to just call it 47XXY. Um, we found out when I was 17 that I had the extra X chromosome. And then, we went on the regular administration of what doctors at the time were saying. Go on a lot of testosterone, that'll masculinize you out. You're still a boy. And that caused me a cancer scare by my 20s. And so, got off of the testosterone in my early 20s, and then at 43 went to the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland for a study on XXY men, and found out that I was born with ovotestes. I had one testy and one ovary. I had a partial uterus, had an underdeveloped pancreas, I had a female-sized heart, male-sized lungs. I had diminished Adam's apple, that I had more female characteristics than I did male. I had breast tissue, but I am XXY, and that led all of that.
So at this point, how old are you?
So I'll be 48 this year. So the NIH had actually said at 43, if you don't do this, this, and this, and go on copious amounts of estrogen, we think you'll be dead by 47. And I said, well, all of that estrogen is going to cause a transition. And they said, for you, to the end of your spectrum. But I don't identify as trans. And they're like, you shouldn't. You identify as what you want to identify as. And that for me is intersex female. But coming back to Orlando after being at the NIH for that week, I had to get all of my doctors in play. I had to start working on a name change, and then that's when one of my greatest friends, a former Disney cohort that I had worked with, who was now practicing law in Florida, but also teaching law at the University of Central Florida, she stepped in and said, "Hey, I know it's not going to be easy, so let's do this together and let me help you." And her only caveat
awesome.
her caveat at the time was, do you mind if my students get involved? And I think I said to her, as long as it doesn't take like 7 years, which it has. But
as a matter of fact,
I'm all about educating.
So before you go on, I want to clarify one thing for everybody. You started taking estrogen as a life-saving measure, not because you were having gender dysphoria or something.
Well,
to that effect. Is that right?
I didn't have gender dysphoria. What I did have was, we found out at 43 that I had osteoporosis of the lower back and spine, and that I had developed lupus, and that there's not a cure for either one of those, but estrogen in quantifying amounts can slow that down so it doesn't take over your body as fast. And so that was why they were putting me on all that estrogen. I then had to have the ovary and the testes removed because that was starting to cause precancer in my cervix floor. So, and it's important to point out, and that was the title of our episode, not your ordinary XXY, because not every XXY is going to be on the course or trajectory that I was on. My case in a lot of ways is rare for XXYs, but I do know about
mostly XXY identify as male. Is that correct?
Right. And okay. I know probably 14, 15 women globally that have had similar situations like mine and have had to transition to live longer. So
right. So all right, so it's a life-saving thing. Now, you found out that you needed to take estrogen when you were at the NIH, right? And then when you came home, you immediately began transitioning into Julie.
So when I
Is that
came home,
right?
I met with my primary care doctor, who was Dr.
Uh-huh.
Andrew Smith at the time, a young doctor right out of residency. And I said, this is what they recommend, and I don't know where I'm going to put all of this into play. And he said, I got you. And so he set me up with an OBGYN. I went in with her. That was actually interesting because when I went in, a lot of the trans community will have to go through um, psychotherapy for 2 years, get a letter from their doctor. And so I walked in
The
and
W path.
the nurses were like, "Where's your letter? Where's your letter?" And Dr. Baring, my doctor, walked in and said, "She doesn't need a letter. This is life or death. So she's not trans, you know." And so I kind of walked right in, and they put me on the estrogen, and then I met with the urologist in Winter Park, and he took care of the orchiectomy and took care of the ovotestes and removing those, and pre-scraping and scraping and kind of the partial hysterectomy. And um, within the first 6 months of um, of going through that, I was starting to change. So it was important and imperative at that time that I start to focus on getting a new name and changing over some of my documentation. So
Okay, so then at that point, um, I'm just trying to get a feel for it. They're putting you on estrogen. They told you that what you know about yourself wasn't ever real, and that you then got started on this course, and it because I've never set foot on a W path myself, so I have no idea how all that works as far as. But they have to get two psychologists, a surgeon, and their primary care to sign off on stuff.
mm.
Um, and I was like you. It's like, hey, you need estrogen. Here you go. It's like, whoa, wait,
when
I'm not supposed
I
to like.
well, they told me at the NIH, they said it's going to happen really fast, and I said how fast, and they said, well, trans individuals are often on 4 to 5 to 6 milligrams a week, but because of
Right.
your issues, you need to be on about 63 to 64 milligrams a week for the rest of your life. So they said
Lovely.
that's going to put you into hyperdrive. And I think within like 2 months of starting all of the estrogen, I started to have hot flashes. So I was like, well, what's this? So it happened fast. I mean, it
Right.
was
All
happening.
right. So okay. Because like for me, it, there wasn't really a transition period. It was like hitting a switch. And it's like, okay, fine, poof, and just relaxed, and everything came to play on its own. I didn't have to worry about it. Um, so then you're in this position. They're giving you the medication. You think you need to change your name. So what did you decide to change first? Birth certificate, driver's license. What was it? How did you start?
Well, the first thing you have to do is change your name. Just like if you were
Yeah.
going to get married or get a divorce, you have to go put a petition in to change your name. And very often they will ask why. So you have to say why. And, we knew, Irene and I knew right away that it's not, it wasn't a transitional like trans name change, which is what all of
Right.
the rhetoric in Florida was already supporting. Um, so it was very important to me that I did not get labeled as trans because I don't identify as trans. And also for the same reason that many of the intersex community do not identify as trans. So I didn't want to put something into play that was still going to not support the rest of the intersex community that comes forward after I leave, So like that was
Right. So the intersection transgender have similar issues, but there are times like this where the road totally divides, and we are not on the same path. And there is just definitive differences between transgender people and intersex people. Um, so anyway, you went and tried to change your name, and they wanted to know why, and then they wanted to make you transgender because of your why. Is that correct?
No, I think they just wanted to know. They want to know why you're changing your name. They ask you questions like, "Are you running from the
Right.
law? Are you trying to?" And you're like, "No, I need to change my name on my documentations because I'm starting to present as a female, and I identify as an intersex female, and I can't be driving down the street and get pulled over and hand you my old driver's license." Do you know what I mean? Like, but that's the process. You have to change the name first. And then when you
Right.
change the name, you take that paperwork and go to the DMV and change it on your driver's license and then take it to Social Security. So the process is getting the name changed first. And, but, in that, they're going to say, who are you and why do you need to get it done? We obviously needed to get it done because I was starting to appear female. But they still need the backstory.
Right.
They still need that backstory. So even when we went to court, I think in January of that year in the 9th district, and Irene would know better, I want to say that the judge asked, I think the first time we went, he said, I don't know what XXY is, and I'm not sure what intersex is. So then we went back, and Irene and some of her students really kind of got involved to pulling cases from across the country, supporting what XXY is and what intersex is, and gave it back to the judge, and he took his time. And then in April, he came back and said, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it because I don't know enough about what XXY and intersex is. So I'm not going to do the name change. And so,
because he doesn't understand it,
he was up for re-election, and Florida is a very red state. So on some level, he probably thought it had to do with being trans. And I the next part, I literally at that point, I think kind of was like, you're the lawyer, Irene, so you step in and do what you do, and she found people in and about Florida that were telling us and advising us what to do, and they finally said it would probably be easier, even though you're not trans, to go retry your case in Dade County, which is a little more open because that's where all the trans and gay communities are. So then we got with Elizabeth Schwartz outside of Miami, and she kind of ran with it from there. And then eventually, because it was twofold. It was the name change plus saying I am XXY, so I am female, and I don't need to have a sex change, basically. So that's what kind of the Florida case was about, topically. But Irene would know. Let's go ahead and bring Irene in.
Yeah, I was going to say this would be a good time to bring Irene in.
Hey.
Hi.
I'm going to put you in the middle.
Hi, Irene.
Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on our show again. If everybody doesn't know, Irene was on our show for the YouTube protest show. And I don't want to put her in a position to say she advised us, but she did point out the relevant laws and how they applied in these situations. And we really appreciate that because, as you can tell, we are on YouTube. So Irene helped us do that a whole lot. And so, Irene, I know I asked you this question last time you were on, but we ask everybody, are you intersex?
I am not intersex, but I'm very closely tied to the community.
All right. How did you learn about intersex the first time?
Actually, through Julie, believe it or not. I had no idea because we went and worked at Disney that she was intersex. And we worked there for many, many years together. So once she started kind of telling her story, I was watching her on Facebook and keeping eyes on just our friends, our circle of friends, our Disney group. And she was having trouble trying to get her name changed and just all this stuff. And I just private messaged her and I said, listen, I can help you. Like, let me know. And she was like, well, I don't have any money. I'm like, you don't have to pay me. Like, I'm going to help you.
I never have any money.
I can relate. Um, so, one thing I want to mention before I totally forget is you got something in the mail today or yesterday, did you, Julie, that
Mhm.
you were all excited about? You want to tell us what that is?
I got my passport. I got my updated passport. So Irene had helped.
Yay!
Irene had helped me put that in July, and we had just said last week, like, where is it? You know, and we're still waiting on our birth certificate, which we'll get to that story a little bit later. Um, but yeah, I came home and I had a long day yesterday and a rough day, and so it was a joy to find my passport. They don't put the pictures in color anymore. I really did my best to look super glamorous to go get my pictures taken in Orlando, and I was so excited. And they told you not to smile, take out your earrings, and now the pictures are in black and white. It's not a bad photo, but it's just like you're kind of
I feel like what's the point? What was the point
Mugshot?
of all that?
a letdown.
But does say female is your designation now on your passport?
I don't know. I have to look.
I'm like, you better check that out.
Let me look.
I'm like, I sent everything in with the court orders. Like that. Does it say female? Does it say Julie on it?
It's gonna say Muppet.
There you go. So, Irene, while she's doing that, I want to ask you about um, that first time you guys went into court and you talked to the judge, and the judge was like, "Well, I don't understand what this is, so no." Um, that's not really a common occurrence in court, is it? Where the judge
No,
is like,
not at
"I
all.
don't
I was
know."
actually surprised that they weren't more open to it, especially considering she was XXY, and we kind of made the distinction between transgender and XXY, although this serves to help all of the community. But I
Right.
was surprised, and so we did have to do quite a bit of educating and drafted a memorandum of law that was like 15 pages long with case law, letting him know that it was okay to make this decision because there was nothing in the Constitution or anything in the laws preventing him from doing it. And he would have set this amazing precedent for everyone else behind Julie to be able to do it. There's her passport. Yay.
Um,
There you go. And what's the result?
so here's the picture, right? Here's my little
There
picture.
you go.
It
That's not
says
bad.
it says Mayfield Julie Amanda, um, United States of America, my birthday, Alabama, USA. But it doesn't say female. It has my name and
So there's no sex or gender on it at all.
well, yeah. There's not like a. Oh yeah, it does say female. It says F right here.
There you go.
Yeah, right there.
There you go. That
There
works
you go.
better than a driver's license.
Fantastic. I think that's your first legal document where you are officially female.
And this, okay, so we really have to think about the impact here because this started, what year did you get started on all this?
2019.
2019. That's 2023, and you just now got your passport. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is it is a process, but it's a process. But to be honest, our process. I hate my hair today. Our process was going to take a little bit longer anyway because we were allowing the students to be involved, which was really important to us, and they were working on crafting the petition, and so we knew it was going to take a little bit longer. I don't think we knew kind of how long the Alabama stuff would take, but we didn't. But at that point in the game in Florida, we weren't even focused on Alabama really yet because we thought if we can get Florida to support the XXY and that I don't need a sex change, then an adjoining next door state would probably say, "Oh yeah, that's fair, change it," and so after everything in Florida happened, and we went back to Alabama and said, "Here's all our documentation. Let's get a new birth certificate." That's when they were like, Nope, we don't.
You had to start all over.
Honoring that, and we had to start all over.
That's ridiculous. So, but I kind of want to work through this in my head, and I'm just trying to imagine being in court and the judge saying, "Well, I don't understand this, so no, you can't do it." And then
Well,
you didn't really have any precedence.
He didn't really say that at first.
Right.
I mean, he talked to me in court. He talked to Irene. He was very warm and generous. He even gave me a hug and said, you know,
Yeah.
this is, he's like, I'm sorry that you have to go through this. You know, so he was very congenial about it. He just came back later and said to Irene, even with all the case load that we had given him supporting it, he said, I don't know enough about it to make a decision. And, you know, Irene and I kind of said he was really nice, but he was also up for re-election that year. And we understood.
So Irene, how do you fight a case where there's no case precedence to go for? Because I know like everything in law is based on precedent, and there was no precedence for this, was there?
There were cases that were similar in nature, but that all concerned more. There was no XXY cases. They were all transgender cases. And so we had to kind of make that correlation between the two cases and kind of bring them together and be like, well, these are similar and here's why. And in these cases, they allowed this and they were able to do a gender marker change, whereas this should be treated the same way, if not even more so, because the person is born this way. And so they didn't have a choice. And at that point in time, because they both had all those chromosomes, and when they were born, their parents decided to raise them one way or another based on their genitalia, then, you know, this is more conviction to be able to pave the way for someone with XXY.
Yes, of this process. People are probably watching the show and go, nobody's talking. This is where Jessup takes all the information and he rolls it around, and then he.
There you go. And I come up with my next question. So you were trying to show the similarities of the transgender and yet the differences of transgender and intersex, and trying to get them to understand that. Was it scientific research that you did a lot of, or was it legal research I just don't even imagine how you would get started.
You just do legal research because judges don't go based on science. They go based on case law. And so you do throw some science in there, but you have to find cases that are similar and have facts that are similar to that of your client that you're representing. And so that's what we did. And we were able to support our position, but it was unfortunate he wasn't able to approve it. So we went down to Miami, and Elizabeth Schwartz, who's an amazing attorney as well, was able to find the right people and get her case in front of a judge that had more of an open mind, I would say, and was able to get it approved. And so we did get a court order in Miami saying, hey, there is no issue. She can have a gender marker change on all of her legal documents. And Florida was all in favor of it. So once we did that, we had this document, this piece of paper called a court order that said, hey, she can have her gender changed on every document.
Intersex, and because it's, you know,
yep,
because that's what intersex is. And, you know, it was a big deal for Florida, and it was a big deal for us in that moment. So
but it wasn't over. Then we had to go to Alabama because she was born in Alabama. So a lot of people may be wondering, well, why did you get an order in Florida to try and then use it in Alabama? And so the reason we did that was there's a full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. It's this really ridiculous law, right? It really isn't. It's just a really important law that says, hey, if you have a court order from one state, it should be honored in the other state. And so if Florida says she can have a gender marker change, well, Alabama has to say the same thing. And that's why we did it under that logic, because we knew in Alabama, the law there was that you have to show that you have surgical reassignment surgery in order to have your gender changed on your birth certificate.
Right. It looks like Joseph is having some technical difficulties. As soon as he comes back on, we will get him back up in here. But that was, I always can't remember what you call it when people ask me. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to call my lawyer. But that's why. So she's saying we thought that if Florida would do it, and because I'd spent so much time in Florida growing up, just as much as I had in Alabama, if not more so, that if Florida recognized it, any other state should take that in and consider it and also recognize it. But we quickly found out that that was not going to work.
And it should have worked, and it would have. But the issue is, we had the big, there's Joseph. Hey, welcome back. We had the big
Thanks.
decision to make as to, if we do this, are we gonna create more problems for the transgender and the intersex community by setting a precedent? Because if Julie lost in court going to the Supreme Court level in Alabama, by fighting it that route, then everyone would be banned from having the ability to do a gender marker change. So we found some loopholes, and we found some other ways to get it done.
And initially, we were going initially, before we went to Elizabeth Schwartz, we had found another person to help us out, and we were excited, and we were going to appeal it. But then I get this lovely letter from the trans community, more or less, who I'm an ally for, right? And that's where it becomes a little difficult when you're an intersex advocate and you support your local trans community. And the trans community basically said in this letter, we've worked so hard for everything that we need. And if you come in and disrupt the fray by bringing up intersex and talking about intersex, it will negate everything that we've been working so hard for. And then none of us will get anything. And my initial thought was, but I was born this way and I'm just trying to live my life. But on some level, as an ally, so that's when we started to look for Elizabeth Schwartz and other ways to get it done, because I didn't want to disrupt everything that they had fought for, and I didn't want them mad at the intersex community, but I wanted to do for the intersex community and not ruffle feathers. It was a process. Can't tell if it's frozen.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
My internet is having a heck of a time suddenly. We got a big storm coming over right now. So the whole reason you went to Alabama is because that's where your birth certificate is. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. So I was born in Alabama. So even though I had this documentation and I had won this case in Florida, we go to Alabama with this case to say, can you please amend my birth certificate? And they said no. And then they said, we need proof that you've had sexual reassignment surgery in order to change the gender marker on your birth certificate in the state of Alabama. So Irene wrote back and said, no. She doesn't have to have surgery. She is literally born both. She is XXY, she is intersex. Florida has already proved that she does not have to have surgery to be in the female form of the vessel. And they said, well, here in Alabama, we need proof. They said, we need proof that you have gone and gotten a vagina, more or less.
So what we ended up doing at that point is we did use the court order from Florida, and we got a letter from her doctor, and the letter said, "This letter is to certify that the above named patient is under my care for treatment of XXY, and Julie has undergone all medically indicated treatments and procedures to complete her transition from XXY to female." And that's all we said. So because of that letter and the way that we wrote it versus saying, hey, you know, she because she didn't have the sex reassignment operation and we weren't going to lie about it. We wanted to be honest and true to the intersex community. So by saying that, we were able to then get the gender marker changed in Alabama because we chose very strategic language to put in the letter for her doctor.
Which now kind of introduces that language in a case. So when others go into Alabama and need to do that in their intersex, they will have that case basis to build upon or use. So coming back in, here he is. Hey,
Third time.
Third time's a charm. Do we need to go back and clarify any of that for you? Did you hear it?
I got most of it, and I actually kind of know most of the story, so I'm asking questions just for people like me that just have lots of questions. So anyway, where did you leave off? We were in Alabama, and you had your birth certificate there, and they said no, you had to prove that you had the surgery. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's where we ran into the problem.
Well, that, and then initially the paperwork that they gave us to fill out was trans affirming paperwork. And I called Irene. I said, I'm not trans. I'm not filling that out. And she was like, but it may be and I was like, no, I'm not doing it. What was the point of fighting? And what's the point of trying to get this done for the last 7 years to better the intersex community if we now have to fill out trans affirming paperwork and we're not trans? And, you know, I go, and I've always said this, people ask me this even on TikTok and stuff like that. I'm like, I go a little extreme when I think about things, but, you know, my whole thing was, I'm not trans. I'm not going to fill out paperwork that says I'm trans to get my birth certificate. And then if something happens in the next few years where they rope all the trans up and throw them on an island out in the middle of the ocean, I get tossed out there because my birth certificate says I'm trans, and I'm not, right? So that's where my brain was going, but also for everybody else that's in our intersex community that does not identify as trans, but may go through a similar situation where they have to get a legal document updated, they should not be forced to fill out trans affirming paperwork. So at that point in time, I went back to Irene and said, can we put intersex and XXY terminology in there? And even the people we were working with in Alabama who were great, they even said, we're not sure it'll go through because nobody's done that before here. I can't hear him. We can't hear you, buddy. You're muted, Jessa.
There we go. Don't mind me. I just find it amazing in 2023 that these issues are still so hidden that nobody has a clue of what to do about them.
Well, so we got the
and just I don't want to be a jerk, but I am. When you could have had your ID changed sooner if you were willing to admit that you were intersex. Is that right?
No, if I was willing to admit I was trans.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Sorry.
Right.
If you were willing to throw away your intersex identity and be something completely different, then
right.
They'd give you what was appropriate.
Right.
Which seems ridiculous. So
we go back and we enter the intersex terminology. My doctor writes the letter that she just read earlier, and we literally kind of sent it with like a hope and a prayer and a breath. And, you know, because I've been trying to do this for 7 years to get my birth certificate. Well, I'd say even fairly the last 3. And I think what people take for granted is I can't register. I just moved to Georgia, last year. I cannot register my vehicle in Georgia without a Georgia driver's license. I can't get a Georgia driver's license without a copy of my birth certificate, and the birth certificate has to have your updated information on it. So if I went into Georgia tomorrow to the DMV and gave them my original birth certificate on my driver's license, they're going to put Brad Mayfield. That doesn't serve me because I'm not
No.
Brad anymore, right? And so, and then imagine getting pulled over in a very southern state
Yes.
and giving them your mail ID and even trying to explain everything to them when you present fully as female.
Yes, they'll still lock you up with the men.
Right. And they'll still treat you horribly. So, even as of, so we won in October. We won in October. And then as of December, still didn't have my birth certificate. As of January 1st, still didn't have my birth certificate. So I called Alabama last week, Vital Records, and said, why don't I have my birth certificate? Like, what was the whole point of suing the state and winning if I don't have my birth certificate yet? Because I'm not out, I can't go do any of this other stuff I need to get done. And the woman said, you have to fax your name petition from Florida. We don't have that. So Irene faxed it 3 times in the last week. And the woman kept saying, I haven't gotten it yet. Until I get it, I can't process it.
Who still uses fax? Oh.
Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama does.
Bad.
I'm like, where's her email? I told Julie, I'm like, you know what? And Julie's like, can you please call her? I'm like, yes, I will call her. I called her. I'm like, do you have an email? I'm like, because it's right here on my computer. I can just send it. And she was like, oh yeah, I have an email. So I emailed it and they have it now, and hopefully she will get her birth certificate.
Let's hope. So, Irene, when you were doing all this research for case president in Florida, you incorporated a few of your students from the University of Central Florida, sorry. And we actually have the honor of having one of those students joining us today. I was wondering if we could take a minute to talk with Tanya. Hi, Tanya.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for being on the original Intersex Connect Live. We appreciate you being here. I'll start you out with the first question we ask everybody. Are you intersex?
I am not, but I am very familiar with the community, and I am here to help.
Awesome. How did you find out about intersex the first time?
Well, in all reality, UCF has been the biggest blessing in my life, and especially meeting Dr. Pons. She actually created a class that's called Intercultural Legal Competence, and it basically teaches students how to be open-minded, how to embrace all cultures, sex, identity, and people. Basically, how to help and support people in whatever situation they are in. And it's been a privilege to be part of that class.
It sounds awesome. Sounds like I could use that class. I think everybody needs that class, to be honest. But, so when you got started in this case for Julie, I'm assuming you probably didn't know much about intersex, and that as you went on that maybe it was more of a passion as a school assignment. I was wondering, above getting a good grade in your class and passing at the university and getting your certificate, what about this case seemed most important to you?
Yes. So basically, I started UCF right when this case was in the middle of the process. I did not get to go to court that first time because I hadn't started yet. But when I took this class, I learned about the case and I started researching the difference between transgender and intersex, because honestly, I had no idea what the difference was. Um, and I learned that some people are born with both chromosomes, and it's not that they identify. Uh, it's not that they identify as female or male. It's that they were born both. So now, based on the expectations that society has, especially about sex and gender, most people do not understand how important it is to know that difference and to advocate for people who are stereotyped in a way that shouldn't be. I learned that intersex, it's not a mental disorder, it's not a physical disorder, it just is. And everybody is worthy, everybody should be treated equal. And most importantly, like Julie said one time, we all struggle through life, but each story is different, and everyone should be able to identify as whatever they choose to identify as. Julie is a wonderful person. She's advocating and helping so many people. And I definitely think her case has motivated me to do the same in my own community. So
I
that's
like that. That's
love.
great. So when you learned about intersex and everything like that, were you surprised that you had never been taught any of that, like through elementary school and high school, and they have sex ed class and this class and that class, but never once was it mentioned in school?
I I was, and it's definitely shocking. We need people like Dr. Pons who put these classes together to teach us these important things that allow us to embrace everybody, all diversities, and understand that we need to advocate for minorities. We need to advocate for people. It's not that we are giving people a voice; it's that we are understand their story and we amplify their voice and their mission in life. And so this class was definitely very important, and I wish elementary schools and middle schools would incorporate more of this knowledge that I got to learn in college.
Yeah, I can appreciate that because I didn't learn until I was in almost 50 years old. And I was like, seriously, nobody ever said anything? What? Come on. So,
Yes.
but we really do appreciate all the hard work that you put into this and everything. And
Irene, how many students would you say throughout the caseload worked on it?
Over 75, because we had 3 semesters where we were working on it.
wow, that's a lot of people. I'm glad I didn't have those billing hours. Oh. Yeah, did you bill anybody for that? Not yet.
They were all very
So,
creative. In Tanya's class in particular, they were trying to find contacts in Alabama to help us. The ACLU, just reaching out to so many different organizations to try and find an attorney that would help us and partner with me to start doing our case.
yeah, I guess that would be a challenge as well, huh? Because then you have to bring that attorney up to speed because there's not a whole lot of attorneys that have intersex experience, I'm sure. And
Well, now they
like
do.
finding
Now they do. You figure all
yeah,
these
now they do.
it's a great thing. All these students can go out, and now they will know what that is and what that means. And as they meet more people that are coming out and are going to need guidance through law, you will have these students. That's why it was big for me to partner as well, and allow them to do it, because it's not just going to end with my case. So
Right. And it's the old you tell 2 friends and they'll tell 2 friends and so on and so on. And the more people know, I'm sure that Tanya and all 75 other students have at least spoke to one person that wasn't in the class about intersex. So
Absolutely.
there's 150 people that learned about intersex just because of that. So,
Yes, I want to mention a
yeah,
fun
that's
fact
awesome.
real quick. I learned that
Uh-huh.
there's an awareness day, Intersex Awareness Day, on October 26th.
Hmm.
And I relate to this issue now because I know the first protest against non-consensual surgery in babies was the year I was born. So I don't know. That's how I connected very deeply with this case and started learning. And if there's ever anything that you need, even though I graduated already from UCF, I'm here to help and I'm here to serve um, under the supervision of Dr. Pons. But to anyone who's needing help, we want to do the same, and we want to become those advocates for the community.
Well,
That's
thank you very much
awesome. We
about
really
that.
appreciate that. All right. So, pardon me. Um, let's see, where was I going from here? Brain cramping. That's where I was going. Um, wow, I got stuck. All right, Julie, this is where you saved me.
I'm, everybody's on their own. Everybody's on their own.
All right. So anyway, though, it's been quite an amazing show. I know that much. Just because, at least in my mind, that the fact that we have to fight these issues in 2023 seems so ridiculous to me. Because, I mean, they were doing it, they knew about intersex back in 1963 when they did surgically assign my sex. And here it is almost 60 years later, and it's exactly the same. I talk to intersex people now, and their story is the same as mine. And it's like, how can it be so the same 60 years later and nothing has changed? But then people like you guys come along and you are making a difference and you are creating change that is beneficial and helpful to everybody in the intersex community. And I think it also helps the transgender community as well because it helps people understand that everything's not just black and white and binary A and B sex. So, um, if somebody wanted to have Irene Pons, Dr. Irene Pons Esquire, represent them on an intersex case, would that be something they could do?
Absolutely, we can help. We've got a lot of resources, and with students like Tanya, who's amazing, she's graduated now, like she says, we've created nonprofits to be able to help the community. I am only licensed in the state of Florida, but that doesn't limit me. I have advocates and I have contacts throughout the United States. So even if I'm not able to help you directly, I will be able to help you indirectly by trying to find someone to advocate for you with Tanya's help.
There you go. So, what would be the best way to get a hold of you if somebody was in that situation?
Sure. So if you need to get a hold of me, it's Irene.Pons, P-O-N as in Nancy, S as in Sam, at UCF.edu. It's Irene.Pons at UCF.edu.
There you go. And Tanya, do you want to offer up a contact information or should we just go through Irene?
As just a student, it would be great to go through Irene, but I can also provide my email, which is Tanya, T-A as in Apple, N-Y, A as in Apple, B-H 96 at gmail.com.
That's short. Oh. All right, then. That's why I'm glad we recorded this so I didn't have to write down as you went. So I can just back up and look. And then we'll try and put it in the comments later today. Yes, Julie?
Yep.
Oh, there it is now. Except that we need to get it in the other one if you can, because that's in the private chat. But where are we going from that? Do you have any other cases that you're working on currently for intersex people right now, Irene?
No, not at this time. So feel free, contact us. We'd love to help.
There you go. So now the Florida laws that they're trying to enact, it's got all sorts of different names. I can't remember its actual name. But the laws about education of sex and gender in elementary and middle schools, that affects the intersex community, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Yes, it's they call it the Don't Say Gay bill, and it did pass. So what it does is it muffles educators to be able to talk to students about anything that has to do with the LGBT community. So that alienates, it discriminates, especially, you know, parents. Think of two gay dads or lesbian moms or a transgender or intersex couple that are raising children of their own, and not their children going to school not being able to talk about their two dads or my two moms, or so it's really, really sad.
Yeah, it is. Um, I like to point out, even though sorry you live in Florida, but the day after they did that, you guys got hit by a hurricane. Oh, it's like all those people in Florida that voted for that are the people that would say that God did that because you're this or that, and then they voted for that, got hit by a hurricane. And no, those two things don't got nothing to do with each other. So, but karma. So, but we really do appreciate you guys being here. Julie, do you have any more questions? You're supposed to have 5 random questions, but I didn't warn you this time.
You didn't tell me. I mean, I can come up with stuff right off the cusp of my head, but it is
All right, but why don't you see if you can do 5 random questions?
3:57. Let's maybe just do 2 or 3.
2.
Irene,
Okay.
Irene and Tanya, what is your favorite candy bar?
That's a good one. I like Twix because it's crunchy and gooey.
Right or left?
Snickers.
Snickers and Twix. Okay. If you could work on any case right now in the United States that you're aware of, which one would you choose to work on?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I would work on immigrant cases right now having to do with the administrative orders in Title 42 and the banning of people from being able to get into the United States based on that law.
She read my mind. Yes, we work with a lot of immigrants, and we've both been doing it for a while. So, as we have experience on that, we would definitely advocate for minorities and work on minority cases. I don't know the top of my head one specifically, but I would, if I had to pick, I would work on minor children at the border.
Accompanied minor children
Yeah,
situation, is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
And because the situation at the border is pretty messed up right now, and both parties are guilty. So, in my opinion,
Okay,
we
let's
know
see.
about opinions.
Third random question. The last random question, this just popped into my head, but Elaine, whatever her name is, it was with Jeffrey Epstein. What do you think is going to happen with her case?
I think she'll definitely have to serve time and she's going to be prosecuted. There's so much surmounting evidence in that case, just reading and the background of what happened and, the aiding and abetting, the grooming. So I believe she's definitely going to be going away for quite a while.
On that case, I have not analyzed the evidence yet, but it sounds to me like she is guilty.
Yeah, I'm just surprised she hasn't accidentally had somebody commit suicide for her at this point. But
I think they are heavily watching her. I think because that
Yeah.
happened to Jeffrey, I think they are literally, they want to close the case and pin it and show the victims a form
they'll
of,
never.
and so I think that she's probably very heavily watched to make sure that that does not happen.
I hope so. All right, Irene, Tanya, Julie, thank you all for being here today. We really do appreciate your input and all your hard work that you've done for the intersex community to make it so that we can live normal lives just like everybody else. You're amazing. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
And
much.
Thank you for having us.
you bet.
And we
All
will
right, so-
see all of everybody else next month, right? Let's talk about that
Yeah.
show real fast.
We're going to put me on the spot.
That's right, I did. We're gonna be talking. We're gonna be talking to authors in the intersex community that have written books about
No.
what it means to be intersex, or books that are.
We're going to be
used
talking
for-
to Cynthia Vaca Davis, who wrote an intersex story, but is not an intersex person. And we're also going to have the person that's in the story on the show, so that they can kind of explain why they wanted somebody else to write it and how difficult they found it to write. So we're going to be looking into that. So, and that is the Saturday the 18th. Is that the second Saturday? I believe it is.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to say thank you for listening to the original Intersex Connect Live. To find out more information about any of our guests, the original Intersex Connect Live, to watch prior episodes, leave comments, or contact us on social media, visit us at Linktree, which is linktr.ee/interconnect. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future programs, articles, special announcements, events, and more. If you are interested in volunteering to help create the original Intersex Connect Live, visit our website and send us a message. I'm Justin Benedict for Julie and all our other guests. See you next time on the original Intersex Connect.